And we're live. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to Codementor Office Hours. My name is Joyce. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sure you'll have questions for Andrew, so throughout the broadcast, feel free to ask your questions in the live chat window right next to this video. So today I'm really excited to be here with Andrew Wong. So start us off with, Andrew, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name's Andrew. I guess I'm a web developer. I like doing JavaScript and React and Rails, so kind of do a full stack, but I guess I have more experience doing front end. I got my start at a coding bootcamp, so I kind of was learning on my own for a little while and then decided that I wanted to kind of take the fast track and really get a formal training. So I went to App Academy, which is in San Francisco. And then I worked in a company in San Francisco, a media company, for about 2 years. And then since then, for about the last year, I've been traveling around and doing a combination of working freelance and starting businesses. So that's kind of what I do.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you joined a coding bootcamp. How did you decide to join a coding bootcamp when you did, and why did you decide to go into programming in the first place?
So I was back then I was kind of like looking for options. Like I had recently quit my job as an electrical engineer, which is what I went to college for. And I had a friend actually who is actually my co-founder in the businesses I start. He was going to the coding bootcamp, and I was like, he was telling me all about it, and it was relatively new back then, this concept, so I hadn't really heard of it, and I wasn't really sure if it worked. But after hearing his experience going through it and hearing how much he learned and hear that he was getting a job and stuff, I was like, okay, this is cool. I want to do this. So I just, started learning on my own a little bit, learning more about it, and eventually went through it.
Awesome. So if you could do it all over again, would you have tried to become a developer sooner? Because you mentioned that that wasn't, yeah. Yes?
Definitely. Definitely. I think in college for sure, for me, going to college at 18 years old, I felt like it was too young for me. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Okay, my dad said electrical engineering was a cool thing to do, so I did that. And I also remember taking programming classes in C++ as part of my undergrad education, and I kind of thought, I thought it was fun. I thought we were building Tetris and stuff, and I thought that was really cool. But at the same time, I don't know, I guess I just had some mental image in my head of computer science not being a cool thing. So I had some internal resistance to it. So definitely if I did it over, though, I probably just did computer science from the start in college.
Awesome. You mentioned that that right now your lifestyle is more like a digital nomad and you do freelancing more. I think recently we've seen the digital nomad lifestyle become slightly more mainstream and more well known. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you do and how you got into that lifestyle?
Yeah, so the way I started was probably different than I'd say most people would do it. So there's this program called Startup Chile where they bring entrepreneurs from around the world to Santiago, Chile to start a company. And they give them a government grant to help them out with it. So that's actually how I got started. And we were running a company there for about 7 months, and we kind of ran out of money. So we were like, okay, I don't really want to go back to the US. I'm having too much fun. So we got some freelance work. And so, yeah, that's what I've been doing now. A mixture of freelance work and starting a new company. So.
So where have you traveled since you sort of began your journey as a digital nomad?
Not that many places. I kind of like staying in places for longer term. So I've actually only been to Chile. I was there for 7 months, and then I went to Peru for a few weeks, and then I ended in Colombia for about 2 months. And then I've been back here visiting family for the holidays, and then in January back to Colombia because I like it there.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then I don't really have a plan for after that, but yeah, a bunch of places that I want to go to. So.
Great. Okay. Do you have any best memories from being a digital nomad, or maybe best or worst memories?
You cut up a little bit, but I think the question was best memories of being a digital nomad.
Yeah.
I think it's really just the people that I've met along the way. Like, really, they kind of gave me the kind of, I guess, support and extra incentive to really embrace the lifestyle, because like I definitely miss my friends at home, and it's definitely good to see them all again. Now that I'm visiting for a little while, but yeah, meeting people on the road who kind of have the same values as me, who have professions that they can do remotely, work remotely every day, and just kind of that like against the grain spirit of like, we're gonna do things our own ways. So definitely, yeah, just meeting all the cool people who lifestyle.
Okay. Do you have any advice to someone who wants to sort of get into this lifestyle?
Just do it. Like, like it may take some time to kind of make the transition, but I think it's really like it's not that hard. Like, you really just find some remote work. So if you're already in a profession that you can do remote work, I think you have a lot less to do to transition. So meet people who are already living this way, and connect with them, and like go to hotspots. Like Chiang Mai is a good one, and Medellin, Colombia is a good one. And yeah, like I would go to a dinner there in Medellin, and like the event was 30 people, 30-person dinner, completely full, sold out, just like people from all over the world, all digital nomads. So it's like there's tons of people out there doing this. So it's, yeah.
Awesome. What are some, I guess, misconceptions you think that people might have about this type of lifestyle?
Yeah, I think the misconception is that like someone who's a digital nomad is necessarily traveling like every week, like a new location, moving. So I mean, I guess some people do it that way, but I don't enjoy packing up and moving super often. So so like people can stay in locations for longer periods of time, and maybe they'll just stay in one location and decide they want to stay there. So I kind of look at digital nomad as, if you can work remotely and you like traveling, then you're a digital nomad.
Good definition.
Yeah.
How would you say that your life has changed since you become a digital nomad? And like, I guess, like, how do you break down your time and like organize your schedule when you're in a different country and, not in unfamiliar territory?
I think that's kind of the fun of it, is like I don't have to work on a set schedule. Obviously, since I've been working with two of my co-founders on our business, that we set up a schedule. So it's really just like agreeing with the people you work with to have a time where you guys are available and have times where you can meet. But I do generally try and keep, like a Monday through Friday working schedule. Otherwise, I would just be like working times during the weekends, and like got to keep kind of in sync with other people, or else like I'll be awake in the middle of the night and like everything's closed, and and so yeah, so I just kind of, it's like very unstructured, but the bare minimum of structure. If that makes sense.
Yep. So we've seen some people say that, traveling and working at the same time is not really a sustainable lifestyle. So I guess, how do you personally like manage your, expenses, and how do you like balance your time with like traveling, but also enjoying your work as well?
Yeah. I think personally, I don't know if other people are different, but I personally like enjoy working. Like I enjoy traveling also, but like I'll be in these places, and it's not like I'm doing a typical tourist thing where I'll be doing all these tours and like going out and partying every night. So I mean, usually when I first get to a place, I'll do that kind of like touristy thing and go check out all the places and get to know the nightlife and stuff. But after that, I just like working on my projects and coding, and so yeah, that's kind of how I keep it in balance.
We have a question from Chris Hansen from the audience. He's asking, when you're doing, I guess, more freelance work, like, are you doing it in the countries there with local businesses, or are you doing it remotely for, say, US companies?
I try mostly to do it with the US, because I think that's our advantage, is that we are an English speaker, and the rates are higher. So I don't really see how I would secure work from like someone who's speaking Spanish. Like, I'm proud of how much I've improved my Spanish, but like I don't really think that I could like secure work doing it. So yeah, I try and stay within the US.
Okay. So I guess speaking of job market, like how is the job market for digital nomads, and like are there a lot of opportunities available? And I guess how do you go about finding these opportunities?
So for me, it's been mostly word of mouth. So definitely meeting other digital nomads is a really good way. I had a friend who I met in Medellin, and I'm not sure how he got connected to it, but he works with this company that has developers, and they were giving him more work than he could take on. So he started offering me. He was like, hey, like, I have this project. I can't take it on right now. Do you want to take it on? And so that's one way. Another way was when I was in Startup Chile, there was a bunch of these companies who they're starting their startups there, and they just knew me. Like, they were my friends. They still are my friends. And we were just kind of talking about stuff. And I was like, yeah, I have some time. I could help you build that. So it's mostly networking, I would say. That's what's worked for me.
Okay. So you don't really use websites like, Upwork or Top.
Oh, there are sites out there like.
Hello?
Yeah, hopefully the connection's working, but yeah, I mean, there's like Upwork, and there's like Gigster, and there's TopTal. So there's all these sites out there where you can find work. I personally, like, they're like a backup plan. I personally don't like those sites that much because it's really hard to build a reputation on there. Like, for Upwork, there's a lot of requirements. Like, oh, you must have done this many projects under you. You must have this kind of rating. I'm like, well, I've done most of my work not through Upwork, so I don't have any kind of reputation on Upwork. So it takes some time to like build up a reputation on them.
Okay. We have another question from Georgina asking if you have any tips on nailing remote job applications, such as like sample code on GitHub or personal branding, stuff like that.
I would say it's probably just the same as any kind of job. Yeah, definitely the more portfolio stuff you can show of apps you have that are live that you've worked on, and it's a numbers game. So finding like a bunch of places where there are job applications, if you're going that route, and just mass sending them, applying to them, and making sure all your profiles are up to date with good examples of your work. So,
okay. So I guess for you personally, like what sort of freelance work do you gravitate more towards, and what have you done in the past in terms of freelance work?
So currently right now I'm working on this project for a startup, and it is building kind of their MVP, so their minimum viable product. It's like a video creation platform. So that's been ongoing for a few months. So that's kind of most of where my freelance work has been. And I've done a little bit of consulting where I was talking with this recruiting company who needed help recruiting developers. So I kind of gave them an inside look at a developer's mind, how they work, how recruiters should contact them. So yeah, I mean, there's like a million different ways, different things you can do. Yeah.
Okay. We have another audience question asking if you're like a beginner developer, is it possible for you to get freelance work, and sort of how would you go about that?
I think so. It depends what level you're at. Like, the better you are, the higher rate you can demand. But I think it would just be important to really nail down what skills you have, and look where people are looking for someone with these skills. So I think Upwork is actually a really good place for a beginner to start, because I think Upwork is a bit competitive with the other people on the platform competing over price. So if you're a beginner still looking to get experience, I think that's a great place to start. You can charge a lower rate, and really sell your kind of communication ability, your, your English speaking, because that's kind of an advantage you have over all the other developers from all over the world. But yeah, if you're having trouble finding work as a beginner, I would say just work on projects on your own to get more skills and build a portfolio, even if it's not real projects, but it's projects that you're just building for fun. You can build a really cool portfolio like that and still show that to the world.
Great. Let's see. We have a bunch of audience questions coming in. Someone's asking for a beginner. Would you recommend like working at a company first, or would it be a better idea to just jump straight into being a digital nomad if that's what they prefer?
I think it could work either way. The way I did it was I worked for a company first, and I will say that that benefited me a lot. Like before I worked for a company, before I did the coding bootcamp, I did teach myself, and I was freelancing before. But looking back, like I was a hacker really. Like my code was all over the place. Like sure, the websites worked, but this was like I didn't have the best practices, and if I had more developers on my team, they would have been like, what is this mess of code that we're working with? So I think working in a company, you really learn kind of industry best practices, which really make you able to write well-organized code that other developers can collaborate with you on. And that, I think, is one of the most important things. So doing the coding bootcamp and especially working in company for 2 years really helped me gain that. So I think, I think it could be done the other way with just going straight to freelancing. But I think just be wary of that, that being able to code with other people and organizing and best practices are a thing, and be on the lookout for those and where you could learn those from.
Great. So what are some of the challenges that you face as a freelance developer, and I guess how did you overcome them?
I'm still trying to overcome them now. Yeah, I think the challenge is definitely, I mean, there's quite a few. One of them is definitely like, the money comes in not on a steady pace, whereas working for a company, right, every 2 weeks I have a paycheck. But working as a freelancer, there's like times where I'll have no income and then it all comes in at once. So just getting used to like just being okay with that and like not freaking out that like, oh, I don't have any money coming in. Just knowing that it will come in is one of them. And I think definitely another one is just keeping self-structured, because it's easy to kind of like start staying up really late and then waking up really late, like getting on a weird time schedule. So I think it's just, for me, it's been helpful to just really sync up with other people and make sure that, like I'm on a normal schedule to some degree.
We have a question asking like, how do you go about setting rates as a freelancer? You mentioned that like, because you're like a US, I guess from US, your rates are slightly higher. So how do you go about doing that?
I would say just set the rate at what you're comfortable with, and be okay with undercharging in the beginning. And basically, as you get more experience and as you get more clients, you'll feel more comfortable charging more. You basically need to set your rate at the rate that you feel comfortable charging someone for, and that if someone's going to offer you less, you will say no. So if it's like if you're saying like, okay, I want to charge $80 an hour, and then someone offers you 70, and you're like, oh, 70, that sounds pretty good. Like, maybe that should be your real rate.
Good advice.
Yeah.
So I guess when you look for freelance opportunities, are there any like red flags that you should avoid or we should look out for?
Let me think about that. I think it's important to define the contract ahead of time and really make sure that there isn't any like changes in the scope of what you're supposed to build that can really push the time needed to make the project more than you originally expected. So yeah, I think just making sure that the initial agreement is very clear in a way that kind of protects you from, like, people who have projects, they want to change it all the time. They want to make it perfect, and they don't really realize that this is taking way more time than you originally negotiated for. So as long as, you know, you have a contract that you'll get paid for any extra work and changes to the project, then I think you're okay.
Awesome. Would you personally ever consider going back to work, like in a full-time job, in a like non-remote position?
I think not really. Like, maybe sometimes I think about it. Like, my friend, I was hanging out with my friend recently, and he was just telling me he works at Facebook now, and he was just saying how great it is. Like, oh, they get all these parties and whatever. I was like, oh man, that sounds so cool. Like, maybe I should apply. But I think, like, probably not. I just realized, you know, my time's limited on this planet. So I think, you know, Facebook, working there, like working at a good company, I think is like a more guaranteed way of making a certain amount of dollars and all that. But, you know, I kind of realize it's not always about making that X amount of dollars, and that it's really just about my whole life experience inside work and outside of work, like the whole encompassing thing. So I think maybe not.
But as long as you enjoy what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
We have another question asking, what are the required skills to start working as a freelancer?
Well, I think there's a lot of skills. I think, like, you could be a designer or a marketer or developer. In terms of being a developer, it varies too. Like, the more skill you have, the better, obviously. But I would say working freelance versus working in a company, it's a very different skill set. So working in a company, they expect you to kind of fit in the structure. So you're more specialized. Like, you'll probably maybe just be like just on the front end or just on the back end, something like that. Whereas on freelance, you generally need a more broad skill set, so less specialized, but more full stack, so you can build an application from the ground up. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah. Like, from your personal experiences, have you found that there are certain like languages or tech stacks that are more in demand than others?
Yeah, I think right now it's Ruby on Rails has the most jobs, and React is becoming more popular. Besides React, I think Angular is pretty popular too. And then HTML and CSS, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, I think like kind of those modern web development frameworks are the most in demand. But in a way, if you're doing something else, if you're doing PHP, like, I know there's a ton of people who need WordPress development. So, I mean, there's a niche for everything.
Yeah. Okay. We have another question asking, are you working on Agile teams remotely? I guess the viewer is saying that, like, she's found that like a lot of companies want to do Agile but don't like remote workers on an Agile team. So what is like your experience with this?
Yeah, so what time do you guys close? 5 o'clock? Okay. I'm getting kicked out of here. Maybe I can go on my phone.
Okay, we can try.
Sorry, I thought this place closed at 6, so let's see. My friend is texting me and laughing because I'm getting kicked out.
Is he watching?
He's watching.
Sorry, everyone. I'm running into some technical issues.
Yeah, sorry, guys. All right, maybe this will work. All right, it's going to be on a different email.
Okay.
Am I there? Oh, great. All right.
Oh, okay.
Hello?
I think your other one is still connected. Okay, there you go.
Okay, how's this? Okay, great.
Yes.
Sorry, that was unexpected. What's the question again?
Agile teams.
Agile teams.
Agile teams, yeah.
Yeah, so I've mostly been working with my co-founder. So we had a kind of like company where we were doing development work for other companies. So our team is me and him. So I haven't done freelance in like a big agile team like that. But I'm sure it exists. So yeah, so I've mostly worked with my co-founder. We're like a two-man shop and we do our development together. So we do like follow agile practices. We kind of map everything out on a Scrum board and put everything in a Trello. And we really follow like kind of like the iterative development cycle, and we do 2-week sprints and all that. So yeah, so even in our two-man team, and he's like someone I know really well, so but we still follow Agile, and it really helps us kind of stay organized between each other and with the company that we're talking with.
Awesome. Someone's asking, what degree do you have, and like what degree is needed to start for good? What degree is needed to be a good freelancer? I guess we sort of touched on this earlier a little bit.
I think any degree helps. It helps you get your foot in the door and get noticed. I have a degree in electrical engineering. It's a BS degree, but really, like, as far as what I've learned from that, it's never been useful, unfortunately. If I'm being completely honest. Okay, sorry, 1 second.
Yeah, no problem.
Getting kicked out of this coffee shop. Thank you. Bye. So yeah, I mean, I think a degree helps you look good on paper, and it will help you get more people contact you for work, or like they'll respond better to your applications. But if you're talking about really what knowledge you need, like I think most degrees in college won't help you that much. Like really, the great thing about programming is that it's completely objective, right? So you can show exactly your code and what you've built, and you can show it to everyone. Like this is what I built, this is what I'm capable of doing, and it's objective. So, yeah.
Okay. Are you good where you are, or do you need to move to?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm gonna hide in my car, but I think I have service from here.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries. Someone is asking, for someone who already has industry experience, but they're just starting out with freelancing, like how would you end up attracting clients? Is it mostly just personal contacts?
Yeah, I think it's mostly networking. So meeting other people who are doing freelance work is a good way. If you have people who are starting companies, they'll often need developers. So that, I mean, that's that route, but the other route is just mass applying to stuff that are open. I mean, there's so many job boards for remote work. And yeah, and then there's like Upwork and TopTal and like those things.
Okay. Someone is asking, on some freelancing sites, like you can see that freelancers from other countries have a much lower rate because their cost of living is much lower. So like, how would you compete against those freelancers when, you know, someone from North America will obviously charge much higher rates?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of why I prefer getting jobs through people I've met in person or who can refer me. So I think definitely like it's easy to get a kind of a skewed perspective of the hiring market by looking at these job boards where there's all these companies, but there's like such a large market out there of people who don't use those boards and who would prefer to hire someone they just met in person. Whether it's, you know, through a friend of a friend or you met them at a meetup or a conference or something. I feel like those kind of warm leads generally don't have that kind of competition.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, we have a question saying, like, for someone who's interested in being a digital nomad, are there any communities or like places they can go to get support and like, talk about this kind of thing? Do you have any communities that you're in for this?
So there's a lot on Facebook. So there's like Facebook groups of the location you're in. So I'm in like the Medellin Digital Nomads one. There's other groups that are bigger, just all around the world. We currently have a Facebook group right now for digital nomads and people learning to code. So you guys can check that one out too. Other than that, so there's Nomad List. That's a really popular one. There's a Slack channel and a forum where a lot of nomads hang out. That kind of costs some money to get into, but there's lots of communities online, and I'm sure there's meetups in most big cities too. So.
Awesome. We have a question from earlier saying, like, scale of 1 to 10. What are your recommendations for, I guess, offline and also online boot camps, and what are the differences that you've seen?
So online boot camps, I don't have experience with. So I would say that I've heard about block.io. So I would say that one's probably pretty good, but I haven't done it, so I can't say. Offline boot camps, I would say, I want to say 10 out of 10 without being too extreme, but doing the boot camp really accelerated my growth as a developer. I really learned things that would have taken me forever to learn on my own. And it really plugged me into a network of other developers. So a lot of my friends in San Francisco, I met them all at the boot camp. And our network is so strong. I know guys who are working at Facebook, at Lyft, at PayPal, at Uber, Slack, all these guys. And we're constantly helping each other get jobs. Like, oh, hey, my company's hiring, who needs a job or who wants to change companies, and just hearing kind of like what kind of salaries people are getting, what kind of compensation, what kind of cool projects people are getting to work on. So you kind of have that inside scoop. The boot camp I did was super helpful in terms of what I actually learned, and then just being plugged into that network and having those connections.
Awesome. Someone's asking, more from the client perspective, how would you judge if a freelancer is, a good or bad fit for your project, or a good or bad developer in general?
That's a tough question. So I guess I'm assuming this is from a non-technical client. So if you were technical, you could gauge how well they code. I think the best way is just ask a favor for a friend who does code to kind of briefly look over stuff they've built in the past. But I think with freelancers, maybe even more important than their raw programming skill is their ability to communicate what they're doing and make sure that they can follow directions properly. Especially with the remote worker, it's important to have very crisp communication and a focus on that communication.
Okay, so you'd say soft skills are also really important, not just actual coding skills.
Definitely, yeah. It's I've heard people who had freelancers who had a developer, and halfway through the project they just left and started doing some other thing, and they were gone. So yeah, it's important to kind of figure out where they're coming from, and if they're gonna stick through this project, and also communicating with them. So it's not always on the freelancer. It's also, as a client, it's important to communicate realistically kind of what's needed for the project and the expectations upfront.
Great. William is asking, what do you think of the difference between coding schools and getting a CS degree? And it seems that there's kind of a divisive gap between these two.
So they teach you a different skill set from kind of what I've heard. So because I don't have a CS degree, So CS degree will focus a lot on the theoreticals, and they'll focus a lot, like I took a few computer science courses in college, and they'll focus a lot on kind of theoretical stuff, like basically understanding computers on an atomic level, you know? Whereas boot camps focus purely on the practical skills that you need. Like this is Ruby, and this is how you build a web application. Like, you don't learn any of that in a college degree. In a CS course, you're kind of more focused on theoreticals. You're probably learning older languages like C++ or something else. So I think a boot camp is much more updated for kind of today's day and age, and it's made to not take 4 years, and it's made to make you actually be a hireable developer in a short amount of time.
Great.
Yeah.
Someone is asking, like, what do you think about online learning websites? I'm assuming they mean like Code Academy or, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's the more resources you have, the better. So, like, definitely in my learning, I've looked at Code Academy. I've looked at Code School. I've spent a lot of time just reading documentation. So the more resources you have available, the better. Yeah, so I think they're super helpful. They could be your kind of gateway to get started, and a way to test if this is actually for you, and if you enjoy it. And then if you do, maybe do something that's more accelerated, like a boot camp.
Yeah, and a lot of these resources are free as well. So, you know, you can take, you know, an hour a day, just spend a little bit of time and see if you want to actually do this longer term.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Someone is asking, are there any coding boot camps geared towards digital nomads? Perfect segue for Destination Dev.
Oh, there actually is. So yeah, so I'm starting one, and it's with my co-founder. So it's called Destination Dev. You can check us out at destinationdev.com. And we're actually gonna run a Kickstarter here soon. So yeah, I mean, just get linked in with us, follow us on Facebook, and we'll share everyone with the Kickstarter that we're gonna start. So I think our Kickstarter allows us to kind of crowdsource the education costs. So yeah, our school is about coding bootcamps for digital nomads. And I can't think of any other ones, to be honest. There's a few that used to exist and kind of went out of business, like Ruby on the Beach and stuff. So maybe I have selective vision. But anyway.
Can you tell us a little more about how it works and like what the program sort of is about?
Yeah, so we're getting 8 people, and we're gonna rent this house, like this really nice house in Medellin. It's in Colombia, which is like a digital nomad hotspot. And it's gonna be 8 weeks of learning Ruby on Rails and jQuery at the end, and SQL in between. And it's gonna be run like a typical coding bootcamp, but at the end of the 8 weeks, we have 2 weeks where we focus purely on landing freelance development work. So that's like our career accelerator workshop. And I mean, I think, like I kind of referred to before, is like just having that community of being there with 8 other people who want to be digital nomads. I think that's really going to be the value in it. That's what sets it apart from just like kind of learning these things online. So yeah, I think it's going to be super fun. It's going to be awesome.
Great. We're going to wrap up soon. So if anyone has any final questions, please send them into the chat. I guess the final question from my team would be, we saw that you wrote a pretty popular post about like how to land, like what you did to land like a 6-figure job as a first-time web developer. Can you talk like just very briefly about that and I guess your process?
Yeah, so that was like right after I graduated App Academy. So I was a fairly inexperienced web developer, but I was confident in my skills. And so I basically played it as a numbers game. So I was just sending out 10 applications a day. I think, I don't know if everyone was like this, but definitely when I was fresh out of college, I would kind of like be very selective about the jobs I would apply to. So I would like read a job description and be like, oh yeah, like I don't really qualify for 100% of it. Like I can do like 9 out of 10 of those skills. Or I would be like, oh, you know, like that sounds kind of cool. I could do that job, but I don't really like align with the company's vision. So I kind of like threw that whole thought process out and was just like, okay, if this is like a job that I feel like maybe they would just even talk to me or look at my resume, I would like send them a resume. So it ended up, I sent out like 80 applications. And within 2 weeks I had the job offer. From those 80 applications I sent out, about, I think like the numbers are on my blog post, the exact numbers. But I think it was about, I had 4 on-site interviews. And then before that, it was like 8 technical screens. So yeah, I mean, it was really just a numbers game and being kind of fearless about getting rejected. So I think that's the big takeaway.
Yeah, I think what you said about like how you fit maybe like 9 out of 10 of the requirements is a big thing, right? Because a lot of people will say, oh, I don't, you know, this is not for me because, you know, there's one thing I can't do, but, you know, if you don't try, you never know, right? Yeah, so good advice,
Yeah, I mean, I think really what it comes down to in the big picture is when you meet the company, when you meet them in person, is there chemistry? Like, do you get along with them? Do they get along with you? So it all boils down to that. Before that, there's just like kind of a slightly arbitrary filtering process because they just get so many applications. So even if you were the perfect fit for that company, you might get filtered out. It just happens because maybe the recruiter's having a bad day that day. So that's why I kind of vouch for the number spray and pray approach.
I think for startups especially, like fit is a very big deal just because teams are so small. So, you know, like I know like for like Codementor person as well, like we look a lot for fit as opposed to like the hard skills someone brings. So just everyone keep that in mind when you're job hunting. Yeah. I don't want to take up too much of everyone's time. So if there are no more audience questions, we're probably going to wrap up. Andrew, did you have anything you wanted to add or?
I think that's all. Like, yeah, you can follow me on my website. It's nomadwong.com. So Nomad and my last name, W-O-N-G. There you can see my Twitter, like my Medium. So you can get LinkedIn and see all these resources. And then, yeah, like we're going to have the Kickstarter for Destination Dev. So hopefully it'll be a big success. So
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, like if you're thinking about becoming a digital nomad, I would totally recommend it. Like, yeah, like the lifestyle is not for everyone, but if it is for you, like you got to go do it. Like you're going to regret it. So,
awesome.
So, yeah, that's what I have to say.
Yeah, okay, just as a little plug as well. When we're talking about like freelancing and looking for freelance opportunities, Codementor actually just launched a new platform called Codementor X. And we have like larger scale projects for developers. So if anyone watching, you know, is looking to get into freelance work, you can take a look at that as well. I'll send the link out to everyone and also the link to Andrew's website so you guys can follow him as well. Yeah, so thank you everyone so much for joining us, and thank you again, Andrew, for taking time and, you know, getting kicked out of the coffee shop to do this Q&A. If there's nothing else, that's it for today's office hours. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks. Bye.